Wheels keep spinning, wheels keep spinning, wheels keep spinning to the morning light. Spinning to the wheels keep spinning, wheels keep spinning, wheels keep spinning to the morning.
Good morning. Happy Wednesday. The wheels do indeed keep turning. I'm talking today, and you're listening to Love Babs Love Talk.
Good morning.
Good morning. Still too loud?
It's still loud, yeah.
Okay. Let's see. Harry, how do I turn this down for him? Like studio? Does this sound better? Still too loud?
I'll work it.
Oh, like they play with the switches over there and see which one seems to pull it down a little bit for you. Okay, you got it?
Oh, look at that.
Better?
Yes.
It's
all in my hands.
We give you what you need. Good morning, Anru Half Kinney.
Good morning, Babs.
How do you put Anru Awu Onabona Half Kinney?
Nope.
Okay.
Onru's right.
Mm-hmm.
Awo.
Awu.
So that's a general term for someone who is a priest or priestess of Ifa.
Okay.
Awo.
Okay.
And then one of my spiritual names. So my spiritual name connected to Ifa is Onigbana.
Onigbana. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Half Kinney, and Half Kinney is your God, your people's name.
My people's name. I'm like God name. No. And that's actually from my father's line, who they had settled so they're actually out of Nova Scotia for about seven generations. So they came from the Caribbean up to Nova Scotia, mixed with indigenous people there, the Mi'kmaq people there, and then my grandfather came down to Boston.
Okay, that's an interesting name.
Line.
It's a cool name.
It works.
I like the Half Kinney.
I like it.
It's unusual.
Yeah.
You know, but I'm sure if I roll somewhere where there's the Half Kinneys hang, everybody's Half Kinney.
There's still a bunch in Nova Scotia. There's a little dispersal of them. A bunch in the Boston area also.
Okay. All right. So welcome. I haven't seen you in a while.
It's been a while, yeah.
Oh my gosh. So last night I saw the piece that your wife tagged you in, the little film by the brother with the stills on the water goddess.
Oh, okay.
But my phone died, so I couldn't finish watching it. But it was beautiful. It was in the Orisha tradition and the history of that, and I wanted to talk about it, but I didn't finish the film last night.
And I didn't see her post, so
okay,
it'll be a question. It'll just be a question. Well, actually, though, there's some things that percolated in my mind this morning.
Oh, I'm so happy. Percolate on.
Yeah. So the two things. One was somewhat yesterday and first thing this morning, just reconnecting with the role of nature.
Yes.
And that this is really a tradition that supports and acknowledges our relationship to the divine in and through nature, with nature. And that's something that has fundamentally been, so that's our heritage. And because of what slavery and this kind of consumer culture does here in this part of the world, not only have we been separated from that, but it's actually been a source of fear and pain.
Yes.
And the counter is not to get actually too caught up in all the fear and the pain and the reasons and what, white supremacy and capitalism and colonialism and all those things have done, but actually the love and the healing and the support in and through nature, and actually a way of really awakening our hearts and connecting with like our purpose through that. So that was kind of one piece that came up that I wanted to
That's a good
speak
piece.
of and to bring into this space. And the other one was actually that just happened this morning. I dropped my son off at across town. He's doing an internship apprenticeship at Eli Whitney Museum, and on my way back, I'm driving down Elm, and I passed by an altar, right? So it's a memorial, an altar to a young man who was killed, who was murdered on Elm. And as I was listening actually to a podcast by a Buddhist teacher, Pema Chodron, and she was talking about
Pema Chodron.
She was talking about really holding compassion and being able to be with suffering and discomfort in a different way. So I was driving by this, and actually something just, I've seen them my whole life, but something was really called to me to stop, and so I actually looped around the block, and then came back and got on. I was like, oh, but I don't have something to offer. So in the Orisha tradition, we make offerings as a part of healing, as a part of the relationship, as a part of an acknowledgement of a sacred relationship and what we're doing. But I was like, well, I'm going to stop anyway and
yeah, because you can't let that be the thing that stops you.
Right. Well, I trusted the initial stop.
Yes.
And so I looped around, and then my mind was, well, I don't have, and I was like, okay, yes. Notice that. That's great. Put that aside and do the thing. And so, I just pulled over and I stopped, and there was a lot of candles around, and some were lit, and there were some empty bottles of alcohol, and actually there was a half full bottle of water that was there. So I used that and poured some libations, which is really what this tradition comes out of libations, is really an indigenous part of honoring, right? Pouring something onto the earth, so the earth itself soaks it up. The earth being this place that holds our ancestors, that holds so much of the divine.
And that's a very Black thing. Like, we have carried that,
right? Exactly.
Without even knowing that we've carried it. You've seen people. We've seen it in Cooley High. We've seen it.
So this is something where very often ways of doing something, a ritual it's easier for that to be passed on than the body of knowledge that's behind it. I mean, people understand, like, I'm pouring this libation for, but that doesn't show up as a religious practice, which actually it comes from. This is a religious cultural practice. Like, you don't see people, I have never seen people in the religious institutions, right, in the churches, pouring libation, saying, this is how I'm honoring the divine, how I'm honoring our ancestors. But that's actually where it's not just a
they do it in my
cultural,
church.
it's not just kind of a social cultural piece, right? But it's actually part of but so what I mean is that even if it's said, it's not actually a part of an explicit cosmology and theology of that religion to do that necessarily, or as a part of our practice. So anyway, the point of this isn't even to get stuck on that, but it was that in doing that, this woman walked by and said, there's a picture of him on the other side, because I was on the street side, and there was a telephone pole. So I walked around the other side, and there's a picture of him and in his life, and it just felt really good to do that. And then as I was leaving, she had walked and gotten in her car, and I said, I want to know something more about this person. So I pulled up next to her and I said, well, what's his name? And she said, his kind of nickname, but said, his name is Darrell. And she was the sister of his girlfriend, and so just kind of thanking her, and she thanked me for stopping, and I drove a little while past that, and I just started crying, and that was powerful into itself, but it was this piece of, it can be so easy to get caught in the reasons why. What are the systems that have created that this is a normal part of our lives, right? This kind of suffering is not unusual, and it's so rare to really pause in that, not just because I know him or his story or anything, because I don't, but to say, like, this, I'm willing to feel this and to be moved by this, and so there was just something about that as well that I also really wanted to share, that these are not sharing these traditions, kind of sharing these ways, is not just like, let me have this other understanding, right? Let me have this mental thing, like, I can claim this, and this is who I am, this is where we come from. But it's really about how do we live and how do we be connected.
I like that. That's a good point, because that means you're not trying to take on something else in lieu of something else because
Right.
you think that this thing is better or more whatever, or it's not that.
Right.
I like that. I like that.
And it's not even like, here's the big answer, right? Oh, great, I get to do the thing to fix. It's like, oh yeah, I'm still this like tender, vulnerable, right? All this stuff hits us and hits me, and these are helpful tools to navigate, but they don't fix that.
I like that thinking. Like I like that you hold space for that. You bring that in. You don't have to do much other than open your own awareness to. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And not put a judgment, like not put some thing on it that makes it less or more than what it is.
Yeah, and actually it can hold something really like life with like a capital L is big, and that these are also ways to be connected to that.
Yeah.
Right. And which is the thing that I think in lots of ways there's that yearning for. I mean, that's the piece that really brought me into these traditions and to find this kind of spiritual path, is what connects me to that big capital L of life and purpose and meaning and mystery and wonder and beauty and magic, and not as a way that's disconnected to the realities of pain and suffering and oppression and hardship, and whether it's like the small stone in the shoe or whether it's the big hammer that kind of comes down, but that we're people, and that these are all ways of maintaining our humanity in the face of the range of those things that keep saying like, no, I'm going to distract you, or no, this hurts, or there's some suffering, and then go distract yourself. But we can really be with it and be with each other in so different ways.
And I think that's at the heart of a lot of people's depression, not knowing how to be with themselves when they are in these places of pain and suffering. And I'm no psychiatrist or psychologist, and I'm not suggesting people don't seek. I'm suggesting people should seek help. But when you seek help, and I have gone through therapy, they try to connect you back to what you are experiencing, because I think oftentimes when we have a bad experience, we want to medicate that away because we don't want to go through it. We don't want to be in it. We want to be everywhere but there.
Yeah.
And the world around you will make that possible.
And easy to say, and enticing.
Yes.
Right? Why feel that way? Just do this. You'll feel much better, or you won't feel.
Or you won't feel.
Right? And the numbness is a thing too.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, this piece around like really getting to feel. So that's actually this other piece around like what nature I think has been for me in that way, that it can hold that. Whether I've read stories of kind of ways of people to kind of deal with some of the pain or anguish or frustration, like if the thing is going to the ocean, you go to the ocean and you stand in the waves, and you just, every time a wave comes, you just hit it like with everything you have. Right? Or you're on the beach and you just like pound the sand with everything you got. And the point actually is not about the anger or the fruitlessness of that, right? You're not going to harm that, but it's to move it so you can actually feel the energy and relieve that component of it, so that you can then actually feel what's under that and be with it. And then actually in nature, it can hold it. This other activity, which I have done and I've encouraged people, it's not a small thing, is to go to a place where you can be alone and you can make a lot of noise and not be worried about other people. And you dig a hole, and that's about the size of your face, that big around, and about a foot deep or so. And then you lay down, and you lay down with your face over that hole, and you just let it all out. The yells, the sobs, the whatever, and the tears, and the snot, and all that falls into the hole. And then when you're done, however long that is, you just rest, and the earth holds you. And then when you're then done from that, you get up and you fill the hole in, pack it down, and then you leave. And the earth can compost it, right? You're not gonna poison the earth. The earth can hold that of us, right? That's actually something that in the relationship it can be really present with that level of pain. But there's also the support that's there. And I found that it's certainly, cathartic and moves a lot to kind of let all that stuff out that I know I've like held in, or this has to be managed in a certain way. But so much beauty is actually in the rest, and like, oh, I can lay here and like I can actually let myself feel the support, because it's something that for myself, and I'm sure for many people, you can acknowledge that support is there, but to really let yourself sink and feel that, oh, it is there, right? The like, oh, I'm really gonna let myself drop back. It's like that trust fall. Like, well, I'm not looking over my shoulder and going back slowly till I know you're there, and inch by inch. Like, what if I let go and it's there? Yeah. And that's that piece of like really being on the earth and being with these forces, or even not even something so dramatic, but like, sitting by the ocean, which I know you love, or sitting by a river, or
I haven't been in a minute, but I need to get back.
Allowing that, right? Allowing the spaciousness that's there, and to trust that it's bigger than us and it can hold us, with all of our stuff that feels so big, right? And kind of put it into a different perspective, is a really powerful thing. And that's something that, for so many people of color, for so many people of African descent in this country there's a severing that happened, where being connected to the land, being connected to the waters, being connected to the air and the mountains and nature itself, instead is a source of either like fear, or we need to control it, or it's a resource for us, and that's been taught to us, and so what this tradition has helped me to do and find my way in, that like, oh, there are technologies and ways of reconnecting that actually is 100% relevant to me and what I need, and not just some kind of idea about what I might need, or what fits into something.
I like that. And I think intuitively, I think we know that. I mean, I think we know it when I drive by and see community gardens,
right?
And people want to be connected back to the land, however small that is. I see it when people take care of their front yards and backyards with flowers, and and I used to think that took a lot of skill, but really I think it goes back to what you said earlier. How do you want to live?
Yeah.
How do you want to live? And so you want to live with green things around you and living things around you, and outside and inside, and so
allowing that. I mean, I think that's the piece, is that I think, like you said, like that's an intuitive piece, and we've actually, for so many things in that realm, like in that realm of in our hearts and our bodies and our minds and our spirits in a healthful way, we have actually learned to doubt that, or that's a place of mistrust, because maybe we've been hurt in there, and so there can become a time and a place. Like I really believe that that's part of our inherent nature, right? That desire for, it's like the plant always moving towards the sun.
Yes.
Right? And you can keep turning the plant, and it's going to like and that's where the nurturing is. That's where I need. And so that's also alive in us. And the more that we can trust that, and then try to find a way that gets externalized, not just this internal place, but like, oh, right, and this is how it's actually connected to life outside of me, outside of just my thinking or my perspective. And like, oh, I can plant a little something, or I can have a little plant, or I can even have a picture of something, like whatever the notion is.
Yeah.
Right. It's not about expertise. It's just following the yearning. Saying that the yearning has value. Yeah. I'm going to honor that. I don't know where it's going to go, but I'm going to say yes to that.
I mean, how many times have you heard people say, I wish I could? And that's the yearning in them, wanting to do it. And I think not doing it because they're unsure of how to move forward. And I think, too, that people really concern themselves with what other people think about what they're doing. I think that's more powerful than I imagined it to be, particularly when I hear people say to me, oh, I couldn't do that. Like, what do you mean you couldn't do what? What can't you do? You can't plant something. You can't, or they'll say,
I don't have it figured out. I'm not going to get it right.
Oh, I don't have a green thumb. I was like, well, there are places where they already have them potted. You know what I'm saying? All you have to do is...
Or you find the things that fit into what care you can give it.
Yes.
Right? Instead of the most difficult, complex thing, like, I failed at that. Right.
It's like, no, don't try to
that
plant
takes expertise.
Fields.
Do the little, right? It's like,
get
go
some
for a walk.
succulents or cactus.
Right? Before you do the triathlon, take the walk.
Take
right?
the walk.
Feel your legs.
Start
there.
Let's see if you like it.
Right.
Just
see if you
feel it.
Well, that's an important thing. Like, even see if we can allow ourselves to feel that, right? So instead of the like, I'm going to push myself because that's what I should do. Ooh, where am I?
Yes.
How am I? Where am I in my body? Where am I in my heart, my mind, my spirit? Let me touch that first, and that's its own. That can take a lot of courage.
Yes.
To do.
And I like what you said. Talk about thinking about how do you want to live? Like, what does that look like for you? How do you want to live? Yeah. And I don't think people give enough reverence to how they want to live. I think people rush through their lives. You know, people are always rushing through their lives. Oh, I can't wait till Friday. Oh, I can't wait till this. I can't wait till that. And like,
I have things to do.
I have things to do. But you're like in this moment, and right now, what are you doing?
How do we want to be?
How do you want to be?
Yeah, like, I'm thirsty, so I'm gonna take some water.
Take some water.
Right, but that could be like these fundamental things get delayed.
And it's like, oh, I don't have time to drink water. I have to go do this thing.
Right.
You know.
Or how's it gonna look like on the live stream? Now I'm drinking water, now I paused on the radio to
drink water.
To drink some water.
I was like, you look like a person just thirsty and want to drink water. Because I'm drinking coffee. I'm like, well, look at me. I'm drinking coffee because I enjoy it, and that's what I want in my life—a little coffee. Yeah. So yeah, I think that's important.
Of being, and again, so both the things that I brought up this morning, right? So nature is all about being, right? And if we can slow it down to be with nature, we will shift our timing. Right? We'll shift our timing to how can we sit really like with a tree, or there's the joke around like, oh, sit around and watch the grass grow. Well, if you did, like, your sense of urgency shifts instantly. And then even on the other end, where does the little gnat, right? And like that's like alive and its whole lifespan is in like a day or 3 days or something, and like, whoa, what does that even mean? But how can we be in this life that we're in versus this idea that we're always getting somewhere, and that's the point. Sometimes people ask me things that I've learned, how they're relevant or something, and not in abstract ways. So there's this thing that sitting by the river, and actually it came to me when I was sitting in a cafe, that life is like a river. So if you're sitting by a river and you want to understand the river, the way that we've learned to understand things is by dissecting it. What are the smallest components of it? Like, what makes it tick? And a river is this great example of a thing that is changing every moment, right? Water is literally passing, is literally not the same thing moment to moment, which is actually the same thing for everything. Like, our cells are living and dying all the time. Yet we have this notion of trying to grasp our understanding of it. So if we tried to do that with a river, right? I was sitting there, I was like, well, I guess we'd have to like freeze the river and then slice it up into parts to understand each little slice and then reassemble it, and then it's not a river anymore, right? Which is the same thing for people and our life. So very often we meet people and we make all kinds of assumptions, and I do, make all kinds of assumptions on who they are, who they're not, how present are they, all these things. And actually, if we think about their life like this river, in this one moment, it's like taking a slice of the river and judging this in its entirety on a slice. We meet a person for like a minute. We don't know the minute before, the minute after, the day before, the day after, the years before and after. Yet we will look at them and interact with them based on our own lens in that little slice of time.
Yeah.
And so being by the river is like, oh, maybe there's more.
Sounds like dating.
Right. Swipe left, swipe right, 5 seconds is who they are. Let me get the right photos. Right. And if we get caught in that, then when it's time, that's actually really powerful, because then when it's time to meet the person, it's like, oh, this is different than what your profile was, and I'm different from what my profile. Yes, we got to find ourselves now. So it's like we approach each other through these slices, and then we're dissatisfied when there's complexity. Like, oh,
I know.
But I thought that that was the thing, and you said that these were your favorite things, and that's just
like it's a little more complex than that.
Yeah, but that's also our nature. Like, it's not, if we can bring this other notion into it along with it, fine. But as long as we don't just get caught up in the like everything is the slice. Yeah. Right. Everything is that.
That's a good. I like that. That everything is complex, and people are layered and nuanced.
Right. Right.
And I think it takes a little time to get to know somebody, as you know yourself.
Well,
Really?
how many of us really know ourselves? Right?
Well, there is that.
but then we're really quick to jump at like, well, how do I get to know this other person
when I don't know myself?
When I don't really know myself, what I need, what those yearnings are,
mm-hmm.
right? Or what the aversions are, and
these
not getting caught up in those stories.
Unspoken expectations,
right?
That everybody comes with, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like
the shoulds. I mean, because I got it from me, right? I should, or and I'm holding you, and then so how do we actually experience each other
mm-hmm.
when there's so much noise,
right? And be authentic in that knowing. And I'm not sure people are ready for authenticity in themselves and with other people. I think you have to grow to that at least.
Mm-hmm. But I think that's part of that same yearning we're talking about. Like that's the health. That's the like, there's something in life that part of me says yes to. Yeah. And there's all these things that tell me no or try to shape it or adjust the volume a little bit, or I want this kind of color, that, or this scent, this is how I want it to look. But there's still a yes in there. And so we're at different places of how we can say that, right? How much we can open ourselves to ourselves and then to somebody else. And so again, like this being in, so in the Orisha tradition, many divinities are either used to be human beings or personified. And something for me that's been really powerful is there is power in that.
Mm-hmm.
And what literally, this river has to teach me by me sitting by it, by me putting my hands in it, by listening to it, by seeing it, how it's different this week than last week, than during the fall, than during the winter, than right after the rain, or when it hasn't rained, for a long time. And there's still a riverness to it, yet, it continues to change and be dynamic. And so this teaching in being open to that, and not just Oshun is personified as this woman who is very connected to her sensuality and sexuality and beauty and connection to motherhood and healing and wisdom, and there's power in that, ways that we connect to that. And the river itself has something to teach us completely different than that, mm-hmm. and completely separate, and that connects us to our humanness and connects us to like the largeness of this life again. And that's like a wondrous place that has had a lot of meaning for me, and continues to come back to like, so how to, like my invitation to people is open yourself to that, not just to like what I'm saying or how I'm saying it, but like what is that experience of like sitting, mm-hmm. and like being like with the complexity of your thoughts and aches and pains, and with these forces which are so completely different than we are, yet is a part of the same life that we're in and has something for us. And how can we be present with that and surrender to that also? Like, I don't know what to do. I don't have the answer yet. Wow. Water, like, creates the Grand Canyon.
Yes.
And always travels the path of least resistance. And like, how are those two things true? And like, what does that mean for me? How can I function in that way? And like, that's just a interesting, like, if there's a tool and like, okay, now I got this tool, where can I use that? Mm-hmm. Right? How can I be more flexible than I think is possible?
Yeah.
And allowing that notion and that curiosity to be there.
I like that. I like the way that thinks. And I think, when you start embracing that level of thought and consciousness, everything around you changes. People mm-hmm. change how they mm-hmm. interact with you when you change and move toward this kind mm-hmm. of thinking. I've seen it in my own life, just in the small steps that I've made to sort of live a different kind of way, and mm-hmm. what that looks like when people show up. Different kinds of people show up now.
Right. Like if you show up differently.
Yes.
Different people show up, and those same people will show up differently.
Yes.
Because you're not in the same script.
Yep.
They're used to A, B, C, D. Great. That's one. And all of a sudden they're like, A. You're like 7. And then they're like, what? And we're still in a relationship. So like, okay, how do we make sense of that? Something else has to happen. We can't do the same script, the same story. We're like Blue.
That was fun. Right? A, B, C, 7. What?
Right. And like, I'm still here. And how do we do that dance differently?
Yeah. But I've seen, haven't you seen it?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you've seen it in your own life. When you change, everybody around you changes. Yeah. And they don't even know it.
Right. Or what you can also see is that you see people fight to stay the same.
Yeah.
And so then they have to do something. They kind of have to turn up the volume on the same pattern.
Yeah.
And because
I've
sometimes
seen
it's
that.
right. So sometimes it's right. People aren't with you on that journey, and
Yeah.
they're like, no. I need you to say B.
Yeah.
And if you don't, then something's wrong with
Yeah.
you, right? Because I'm doing the same thing. You're the one that's changed. And then if that's about our real yearning and our health and our wholeness, then sometimes it's like, okay, so this relationship has to change, and maybe I need to like shift my attention and shift my connection so that I'm not looking for you to be with my flexibility, because you can't meet me there, and I'm not going to go back to this other way. And so I have to find a new way to be in this relationship. It doesn't have to be like we have to find a new way, because we don't have control over other people. And that discomfort sometimes pulls us back into those old patterns.
Yeah.
Yet to remember that yearning to life and the bigness of it, right? That's bigger, and purpose and meaning, mystery and magic, all these wonderful things, or all these life things, they're not always wonderful. Something else is calling. Something else is saying like, well, now I need to find places where this is some nurturing to how I'm trying to be. And that's hard. And that takes courage, because it's not just this internal shift. It's like, oh, like this person is not showing up in the same way.
Move myself, right?
I cannot hang out with those people, right? It gets very real. It can be. And then where are the supports? How do I logistically do this? It's not the abstract. It's not just like a feeling difference. Like, oh, right, it's not good for me to be there, and I don't know where the next here is. How can I trust? How can I find that? How can I keep listening to the yearning to guide me? How can I keep listening to whatever this new way is?
Yeah.
Can be challenging. Right?
And I see it with people all the time when they are trapped in this, trying to, they want to live a different way, but they're trapped in this bubble of, not being able to sort of break free from whatever the voices are that are like, oh, I need you to stay the same, because if you change, then I have to change, and I'm not willing to change.
It'll be loss.
Yeah.
Right? We've been doing really well protecting ourselves and moving through the world, and now you're gonna do what? That's
like, now you're gonna change. Oh, you think you better? No.
Right. And internally we say that, and we often have people who say that, right? Or who can't be with us on the journey that we need to be on. Yeah. And that is also life. I mean, that's also this dance of where we're like moving towards the sun, but it also means, this part of myself that was needed, like that just withers. I don't even have to cut it off. Like it'd be like, this branch is now in the shade and I need to grow in this way. And that's just, you see it on a tree, like that one withers and there's like the branch falls off, not because it's sick, but because, that's not serving it anymore. Yeah. And then it draws the energy back into itself. Right. And that branch dies and starts rotting. Other things start to grow in it, and then it falls and becomes something else. And the tree is like, well, that's okay, because I'm growing in this other direction and I got what I needed from it. And now I need something else. Yeah.
And that's a real life. Those are real life kinds of things that people struggle with all the time, trying to create a life for themselves that speaks to the yearnings. Right. And I think you do have to be still and sit still to hear the yearnings. And I think people who run themselves ragged are the people who don't want to listen to the yearning. That's my opinion. Yeah. Well,
and to me, nature was that place for me. So when I went by myself, into the woods, not like deep off into it, and I actually didn't have a lot of experience. Like, I was outside and went to parks, but like being in the woods of Vermont was not like experience I had. I grew up in Boston, and so that was the like, oh, right, kind of outside over here, I can just like go over the hill, and then like people aren't coming over here, and I can like sit, and the external chatter of expectations went away, and so something else was there. And so even though there was a lot of internal chatter, it wasn't getting fed. Like there wasn't like a feedback loop of like, I'm distracting myself and the outside world is distracting me, and there we is. It was like, okay. Instead it was, wow, the outs is like, there's the wind, and there's some kind of bird, and and that worry that I had is just not here, and I could be with myself in a different way. And so that with practice was like, well, maybe I could be this way even when I'm back in that other place where there's more noise and there's other expectations. And that's the place of like, you kind of go to the place that's nurturing and then this return. Because it wasn't about like, okay, I'm just going to like say goodbye to everybody. I'm just going to go be a hermit and go kind of live out here. I mean, people do that, but that wasn't what was important for me. That wasn't for me. And it was like, how do I maintain this? How do I bring this back? And that's continuous. I mean, that still happens. You know, needing this like to really go into these places, kind of solitude. Like I love, I can perform, I can talk in front of a lot of people and do things. And like the thing that feeds me is like being by myself, particularly in and connected to nature. And so there's a different kind of restoration that happens, even as with more and more practice, I can still, I mean, the earth doesn't disappear because, right, I'm now on a radio station, right? It's actually still here, and I can actually find my way to connect with that, right? The breath, nature is actually still here everywhere. And so that becomes a different kind of stretching and connection. But that takes practice.
That point. I like that.
Right? Like the ocean, Babs, the ocean is still around.
I know.
It's still really big.
It doesn't go anywhere because I'm not at it, you know?
Right.
I know where it is.
Right.
And
but
it'll
to
be
like
waiting.
find your way, but even now, like to find your way through you there is possible.
And that I find that quite comforting when I'm in moments of stress.
Right.
I mean, because we all have stress. There's no way I could get around it. But I know how to take myself to the beach, you know, because it's in my arsenal, my toolbox of things. It's like, you know what?
You were saying arsenal. I heard that.
I don't like, you know, I'm trying not to use.
I know.
I'm trying not to use warring language.
That's good. No, I think so. The only reason I said it, I think that's a good explicit thing to also state. Right. So much gets weaponized.
Yes.
Right.
And I'm really trying to deliberately not do that.
Yeah.
When in my common language. And you know, so much of our common language is warring language. Oh, I'm gonna kill it. Oh, I mean, it's just
right. I'm on the front lines.
Oh, I got my armor. I got my game face on. Yeah. Like so much of our language is warring language, and so little of our language is love language. You know, and people. I mean, even when we relate to men and women, I'm gonna beat it up. All these kinds of war. I was like, are you talking about making love? Right. Because you're using battle language for something that is so sacred. Do you really want to?
Well, we've lost.
Connect to that.
We are not encouraged to be connected to like tenderness and vulnerability.
Yeah.
Even though that's the yearning.
Yes. Right? Even though that's the yearning.
So it all gets weaponized.
Yeah.
Because that's the language we have, and then we get confused why it's actually not serving us, why it's not connecting to the thing that we're actually yearning for.
Yeah.
But I thought, right, here's the app, right? I'm swiping. I put these pictures up. They put the pictures up. Why isn't it that? So, but I thought, this is what I bought. This is what it said on the package. All natural, blah, blah, blah. And like, it was not. It's like, butter flavoring in the butter. Like, like what? How did that happen? Right?
Yes. So I've been making that a project of mine, a way of life of not using warring language. Yeah. And it's quite challenging. I mean, I can't tell you how hard it is to stop using language of war as part of my everyday life, and trying to replace it with words that are. And people are always stunned when you use languages of love. When I greet people, hey, beloved, or my love, or my dearest, instead of hey, my nigga. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, it's a very unsettling thing for people.
Even something like a fist bump.
Yes.
So, right, a gesture of fighting, right, becomes a gesture of connection, right? And so there's all kinds of things we can talk about, like transforming it, which is great. But what happens is that's still like a primary form of expression. And how can we also include really explicit forms of connection that are, heart to heart, that are really connected, tender, vulnerable, not like everybody's got to be your deepest friend living in these heart spaces and in the super deep places, but can't we just even acknowledge like, oh, like here you are, I'm in a physical body, there's ways that it's wonderful and ways that there's a struggle, and you're in a physical body, that's too. So how can we connect in that? That's has some ease in it,
Mm-hmm.
and not to kind of over intellectualize everything, but like you're saying, language, how we share space together, how close we stand or don't stand, how we look at each other or don't.
Mm-hmm.
Some of it is these kind of cultural constructs, but where have we adopted cultural constructs that are create distance, and can we also do those that create connection?
Yeah. Because everybody wants connection.
Right.
Everybody wants,
right.
What is Sheila E. saying? Everybody wants the love bazaar,
Mm.
but nobody's willing to do the work.
Right.
Because they don't know how to do. They don't know where to
Right.
start to do the work. I'm convinced of that.
And there's a prescription of how that happens.
Yeah.
Right. So particularly with people who identify as men and kind of male gendered, right? These are the ways that there can be connection, right? In certain kinds of athletics, certain kind of like brotherhood or military, right? These are the ways that we can have connection that's kind of weaponized, even though there's some tenderness in there, right? So I don't want to say that there's not actual connection, but it's through this other lens that's very prescriptive. And if you step outside of that, then it's like, oh,
yeah.
What do you? Oh, no. I'm gonna hug you. I'm gonna love you in this way, but I'm not gay.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
as if that's an awful thing, right? So that's one part of the argument, right? So it's not an awful thing, but that also becomes weaponized, right?
Mm-hmm.
Your heart is a threat, and so I have to push that away, and I have to demean it and dehumanize it, instead of, wow, look how caught up we've gotten that connection has to be sexualized in a certain way.
Yeah.
Right. And that's something we've learned. And so that requires an unlearning.
Mm-hmm.
And how do we connect with the yearnings? Like, oh, how do I find my way in this new way?
Yeah.
Right. And that's the same thing, right? A, B, C, D. And then you're like 7. And they're like, whoa, no. You freaked me out. I don't know what that is now. You've confused me.
That's
and
true.
so there's some relearning. And it's like, no, I'm gonna stay in this other place. And like, maybe you can see me here and be with me, and maybe you can't. But this holds more of me in it.
Yeah.
And I would love for you to be in this place. And if you can't, fine. I'm gonna take care of myself.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna still allow more of this unfolding to occur, and in ways that work.
I like that. That's a good thought. Man, we've covered a lot of ground today. But it was all good, right?
Yes.
I mean, I think it's all good. I think the takeaway for me is, how do you want to live in the world?
Yeah.
How do you want to live? And how do you connect yourself back to nature?
Mm-hmm.
In easy ways that
Mm-hmm.
don't, like, I'm not telling nobody to go hike the famous trail, the trail.
Appalachian.
Yeah. I'm not asking people to hike the Appalachian Trail.
Right. Well,
I mean, if that's your
or why
thing,
not, right?
Or why not?
People have all kinds of other ideas around goals that like are not attainable, right? And they're like, yeah, I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna win the something and go to them, be on the top of that. I'm gonna have the goal, whatever. Okay, but you're not gonna hold as possible like being in nature for an extended period of time.
Yeah.
Just walking, right? Even in that, like, I get it, right? But like, look at how far we have come, and this is right. So again, right, if we look at indigenous, earth-based, and in particular, we're looking at African indigenous traditions that were a part of our everyday, ordinary existence,
Mm-hmm.
and we were ripped from that. That the notion of spending time in nature is crazy sounding. It says how far we've been taken, right? And it's not about kind of this kind of suffering or romanticizing kind of doing without, but it's like, wow, there's a whole, right, the people of European descent, it's like, oh, that's like, for some, it's like, that's like rest and rejuvenation and a break. And like, yes, I would love to be able to do that. Yet, as people of color, because of the place of what we've been torn out of, and then what we've been kind of sold instead, and the ways that nature has been a place of suffering and fear, and wrapped up in either slavery or prison labor,
Mm-hmm. Or fleeing slavery,
right?
Right.
That it's not the place to reside in.
Right.
It's like you got to move through this to like get away.
Yeah, because
right?
all that held danger.
Yes, and like that, there's such healing that's needed, so that the places that can actually be a source of support for us, not just healing for the sake of healing, but we need healing so that we can actually access the things that will help us to be more human.
Mm-hmm.
That was such an example of like, wow, this is so disconnected. We've been so disconnected, and just part of my hope isn't like this is the one kind of ultimate right way, but like these are all the tools, and nature is here, and it is bigger than us, and we are part of it also, and not for us to manage as resource and control in that way, but like we are actually the vulnerable ones. Everything else in nature, they're fine. That system's working fine without us, right? We need it, right? It's like we got the fire, and we got the animals to skins and to eat. We got to do all these things, and the rest of nature's like, well, we're good.
We good. We don't
right?
need
it's
humans
winter.
to do a damn thing.
Right? It's winter. You got all kinds of animals living outside in New England through the winter.
Through the winter,
right?
Not us.
We are not. We are not built to do that.
No, we are not.
And that's the ways that so many traditions are like, we are actually more vulnerable, and we need these systems, and they are our teachers, and they make us who we are. And those are things that we've lost. There's been systems that have done that, and now is also a time that we can say, oh, maybe how can I find what that actually means for me, right? And that's kind of our capacity and our ability to honor that yearning and to honor some possibilities wherever it is, right? Doesn't like to actually walk that trail. I mean, it takes a lot of work and a lot of preparation. So it's not just to jump into it in a practical way, but what would it mean to just like, I'm just gonna go for a walk. I'm gonna sit by the river. I'm gonna sit by the ocean and acknowledge, not just so we have that connection already. And how do I understand that when I'm doing that, I'm connected to something bigger? I'm actually connected to these divine and sacred forces, and I can actually have a relationship with them that can be relevant to my human experience and to the specifics of who I am and how I'm trying to live, not just in a general, that was relaxing. Like, that's good. And wow, what if I brought my yearning for a partner there? What if I brought my yearning for physical health? What if I brought my yearning for a job? What if I brought my yearning for just helping me to navigate the sufferings and the strugglings of my life? What if I brought that to that place? What if I connected in that bigness to those places of vulnerability and watched what happened?
I like that. It's always a pleasure having you here.
Been
Always
really
a
nice.
pleasure.
Been nice.
Always. So we'll get another day because people are like, when is he?
Yeah.
I think we have a series now. I think people are binge listening and binge watching our series.
Yeah.
Swear to God, people are like, I've listened to 3 and 4. I was like,
yeah. And I actually
series.
have several of them on my website, healingandliberation.com, so people can
great.
listen to them all in the series on the row.
Oh, that is good because people have been doing the work.
Yeah.
People have been running up on me about this podcast. Like,
I'm happy to keep it going.
When is he coming? Like, all right. So pretty soon. Yeah. So thank you.
Babs.
Thank you so much. Harry, I'm on my way out. Thank you all for listening to Love Babs Love Talk. I'll be back tomorrow. Yeah.
the morning light. Ride all night, ride all night. Keep me moving till the morning light. Wheels keep spinning to the morning light. Wheels keep spinning, wheels keep spinning, wheels keep spinning to the morning light. Wheels keep spinning, wheels keep spinning, wheels keep spinning to the